Hey parents, let me ask you something. Does your child have that one special stuffed animal, blanket, or toy that they absolutely cannot live without? You know the one I'm talking about? That raggedy teddy bear that's been loved so much it's falling apart, or that blanket that's been washed 1,000 times but still gets dragged everywhere. Maybe you've tried to wash it and your child had a complete meltdown. Maybe you've forgotten it at home during a trip and had to turn around to get it because your child was inconsolable. If this sounds familiar, you're witnessing something absolutely remarkable that Donald Winnicott discovered during his decades of working with children and families. That teddy bear your child clings to isn't just a toy. It's not just comfort either, though comfort is part of it. What your child has created is something Winnicott called a transitional object. And understanding what this really means can completely transform how you see your child's development and emotional needs. Winnicott was fascinated by these special objects that children form such intense attachments to. He noticed that almost every child, at some point in their development, becomes deeply attached to something, usually between the ages of 4 months and 4 years. And he realized that these objects serve a function that's absolutely crucial for healthy emotional development. Here's what Winnicott discovered that changed everything we know about child psychology. Your child's teddy bear represents the very first relationship they have that isn't with a person. It's their first experience of loving something that isn't their parent or caregiver. And through this relationship with their special object, they're learning something incredibly important. They're learning how to be both connected and separate at the same time. Think about it from your child's perspective. For the first months of their life, they don't really understand that they're a separate person from you. In their mind, you and they are one unit. But as they grow and develop, they start to realize that you're actually a separate person who sometimes goes away, who has your own thoughts and feelings, who can't always be available exactly when they need you. This realization is both exciting and terrifying for a child. It's exciting because it means they're becoming their own person, with their own identity. But it's also scary because it means they have to learn how to manage being alone sometimes, how to soothe themselves when you're not right there, how to feel secure even when they can't see you. This is where that special teddy bear comes in. Winnicott realized that transitional objects help children bridge the gap between being completely dependent and being independent. The teddy bear is neither fully them nor fully you. It exists in this magical space in between. It has qualities of both the child and the parent, which is why it can provide comfort when the parent isn't available. Let me explain this in a way that might really hit home for you as a parent. Think about how your child interacts with their special object. They might hug it when they're scared, talk to it when they're lonely, or even scold it when they're frustrated. They're practicing all the emotional skills they need for relationships, giving love, receiving comfort, working through conflicts, expressing feelings. But here's the really beautiful part. Unlike with real people, your child has complete control over their relationship with their transitional object. The teddy bear never gets tired, never gets frustrated, never has bad days. It's always available for comfort, always ready to listen, always there when needed. This gives your child a safe space to practice being in relationship without the anxiety of potentially being rejected or disappointed. Winnicott also noticed something really important about how children choose their transitional objects. It's not random. Usually, the object has some quality that reminds them of their primary caregiver, often the mother. Maybe it's soft like mom's skin, or it smells like home, or it has a texture that feels comforting. The child unconsciously chooses something that carries the essence of that primary relationship. I remember one story Winnicott told about a little boy whose transitional object was his mother's old silk scarf. The child would rub the scarf against his cheek whenever he was tired or upset. What was happening was that the smooth texture of the silk reminded him of his mother's touch, but he could have access to that comfort even when she wasn't physically present. The scarf became a bridge between being with mom and being separate. For Mom. This is why it's so important that we as parents respect and honor our children's relationships with their transitional objects. When your child is attached to that beaten-up stuffed animal, they're not being babyish or silly. They're doing serious emotional work. They're learning how to feel secure in the world, even when their primary attachment figures aren't right beside them. Now, I know some parents worry about these attachments. Maybe you're concerned that your 4-year-old still needs their blanket, or you're embarrassed when your child insists on bringing their stuffed animal to the grocery store. Maybe well-meaning relatives have suggested it's time to wean your child off their special object. But here's what Winnicott learned that's so important for parents to understand. Children naturally outgrow their need for transitional objects. When they're developmentally ready, you don't need to take the object away or set limits on when it can be used. In fact, trying to force a child to give up their transitional object before they're ready can actually slow down their emotional development and increase their anxiety. Think about it this way. The transitional object is helping your child build internal emotional resources. It's teaching them that they can feel safe and comforted even when they're not physically attached to you. Once they've internalized that sense of security, once they truly believe deep in their bones that they're lovable and that comfort is available to them, they won't need the external object anymore. This usually happens gradually and naturally. Maybe your child starts leaving their special blanket at home sometimes when you go out. Maybe they forget about their stuffed animal for longer and longer periods. Eventually, the object might get put away in a special place and only brought out occasionally for extra comfort during stressful times. Winnicott observed that most children naturally transition away from intense attachment to transitional objects sometime between ages 2 and 5. Though every child is different, some children never seem to have a strong attachment to a particular object, and that's normal too. Others might maintain a soft spot for their special object well into childhood, and that's also perfectly healthy. Here's something else that's really important to understand about transitional objects. They often become more important during times of stress or change. If your child has mostly outgrown their attachment to their teddy bear, but suddenly wants it again when starting school or when a new baby is born, that's not regression. That's wisdom. Your child is recognizing that they're facing something challenging, and they're reaching for a tool that they know provides comfort and security. This is actually a sign of emotional intelligence, not immaturity. They're taking care of their own emotional needs in a healthy way. I want to share a story that really illustrates how powerful these objects can be. There was a little girl who had to be hospitalized for several days when she was 3 years old. Her parents were worried about how she would cope being away from home in such a scary environment. But this little girl had a small stuffed elephant that she'd been attached to since she was a baby. Throughout her hospital stay, that elephant was her constant companion. She would tell the elephant about the medical procedures she was having, comfort the elephant when it was scared of the doctors, and make sure the elephant was comfortable in the hospital bed. Through her relationship with this transitional object, she was able to process her own fears and maintain a sense of security, even in a very frightening situation. The nurses and doctors quickly learned to respect the importance of this relationship. They would examine the elephant before examining the little girl. They would make sure the elephant was comfortable during procedures, and they understood that separating this child from her special object would have caused unnecessary trauma. This brings up another important point about transitional objects. They're not just important for the child. They can be incredibly helpful tools for parents and other caregivers too. When you understand that your child's special object represents their developing ability to self-soothe and feel secure, You can use this knowledge to support them through difficult situations. Going to the dentist? Make sure the teddy bear comes along. Starting daycare? Maybe the special blanket can stay in the cubby for comfort. Having a sleepover at grandma's house? The transitional object can help your child feel connected to home even when they're somewhere new. But here's something crucial that Winnicott emphasized. The power of the transitional object comes from the child's relationship with it, not from the object itself. This means that we as adults need to be careful not to interfere too much with this relationship. We shouldn't try to control how the child uses their special object, when they use it, or what they do with it. Sometimes this can be challenging for parents. Maybe your child's special blanket is getting really dirty and smelly, but they won't let you wash it. Maybe their stuffed animal is falling apart and you want to repair it or replace it. Winnicott would encourage you to involve your child in these decisions and respect their feelings about any changes to their special object. I've known children who became very distressed when their parents washed their transitional object because it changed the smell or the texture in ways that made it feel less comforting. I've known others who were heartbroken when well-meaning adults tried to repair their special toy because the imperfections were part of what made it special to them. The key is to remember that these objects become precious to children in very specific ways, and small changes that seem insignificant to adults can feel devastating to a child who depends on their transitional object for emotional security. Here's another fascinating thing Winnicott discovered about transitional objects. They help children develop what he called the capacity to be alone. This might sound contradictory. How can an object help a child be alone? But what he meant was that the transitional object helps children feel secure enough to explore their own thoughts, feelings, and imagination without needing constant external stimulation or reassurance. When your child is playing quietly with their special stuffed animal, telling it stories, or having conversations with it, they're developing their inner world. They're learning to be comfortable with their own company, to trust their own thoughts and feelings, and to find resources for comfort and entertainment within themselves. This capacity to be alone, to be comfortable with solitude, and to have a rich inner life is actually one of the most important skills for mental health and creativity throughout life. And it often starts with these early relationships with transitional objects. Winnicott also noticed that transitional objects can help children work through difficult emotions and experiences. Just like adults might talk through problems with a friend, children often use their special objects as confidants and companions in processing their experiences. A child might feed their stuffed animal when they're learning about nurturing. Or they might put their teddy bear in timeout when they're working through their own experiences with discipline. They might comfort their special blanket when it's scared as a way of learning to comfort themselves when they feel afraid. All of this is incredibly sophisticated emotional work, even though it might look like simple play to adult observers. Through their relationships with transitional objects, children are developing empathy, learning to regulate their emotions, and building the foundation for healthy relationships throughout their lives. So the next time you see your child cuddling their special toy, or when they insist on bringing their blanket along on an outing, remember that you're witnessing something truly remarkable. Your child is demonstrating their natural wisdom about what they need for emotional security and growth. They're showing you that they're developing the internal resources they need to feel safe and loved in the world. And that raggedy teddy bear or worn-out blanket? It's not just a toy. It's evidence of your child's growing emotional intelligence. They're developing capacity for love and attachment, and their natural drive toward independence and security. It's one of the most important relationships in their young life, and it deserves our respect and support.